everyone. Welcome back inside Centura Health Training Center for another episode of Broncos Now. As always, I'm your host, Sydney Jones, and coming up on today's episode, today marked day 16 of training camp here for the Broncos. So we'll take a look at today's highlights. We'll hear from quarterback Russell Wilson as he details the progress this offense has made. All that and more coming up. Broncos were back out on the practice field again today for day 16 of training camp. And as tomorrow marks the final day of training camp practices, quarterback Russell Wilson spoke to the media today and detailed the progress this offense has made from the start of camp to now.
Well, I think that the best part is that we're really catching on to everything that we want to do. I think the guys are, us as a collective group, we're having consistency just of, coming out into the field, using the walkthroughs, using the practices. I don't really call them walkthroughs. They're kind of like jog throughs, but using those to really get our mind going before practice. I don't know, it's about 50 plays or whatever, however many it is. And then at the end of the day, it's all about making plays. We're doing that, a great job of that. But I think also, we're feeling really confident in terms of what we're doing, the identity of who we want to be. Obviously, being a physical, running football team, being a team that can also, throw the ball, around the field and got a lot of playmakers. Obviously, Jerry Jeudy and Courtland can do some special things. You saw Courtland make that great play. The tight ends, Troutman and Dolches, they've been having great days. I think we got a plethora of running backs. And then up front, it all starts with those guys up front. I got a lot of confidence in those guys, man. They work their butts off every day.
Offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi also spoke on that and talked about the offense's flow during practice on Wednesday.
Yeah, we made some plays. I think it's important in practice that sometimes you're running a play against a poor look, sometimes you're running against the perfect look, and just really focusing on the execution and not feeling like, the world is ending if it wasn't the best day, and not feeling like you've arrived if it's a good day. So, we'll watch the tape. Sometimes 5 guys did something wrong and you still had a good play, and try not to be too happy about that, even though it gives everyone confidence.
Russell Wilson was also asked about his confidence in this offense and how it grows every day.
Every day you learn a little bit more. You learn a little bit more about who we are, what we're trying to do, as a team, I think it's all coming together. It's all, the picture's all coming together. It takes time to paint a beautiful picture sometimes, and we're doing that all as one. And I got a lot of confidence in our guys and who we are as a collective team, and we're not wavering. We're just going to keep working and getting ready.
The Broncos head out to San Francisco for their second preseason game in just a few days. And as the team looks ahead to that, defensive coordinator Vance Joseph and offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi talked today about their respective units' performances in the Broncos' first preseason game last week.
I think our tackling wasn't great in that game. It was a lot of leaky yardage. Our third downs were too short. 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. That's not good enough. On contact, they were pushing for 2 and 3 more yards. So improved tackling, that's going to be a focus, obviously, and winning more third downs. We lost half of our third downs. That's not good enough. So those 2 areas are obviously areas you have to do on defense to be good. So that'll be the focus Saturday night.
You go through practice, you got a couple weeks, and guys are working on their technique. Sometimes we're asking them to do things a little bit different, and I think it's natural. The first time under live bullets that sometimes they revert. So. Just some technique things that, guys went back to old ways of doing things that I think, I think your best learning experience is when you do it wrong in a real situation, and you can kind of reflect as a player and see how, going back to the fundamentals we're working on are going to help them.
Now joining me here inside the Broncos podcast studio is Broncos lead writer Eric Delale. Eric, it was a hot win today for day 16, but it was a great practice, and I think probably one of the better ones we've seen from this offense.
Yeah, so they were moving the ball well. It was toasty out there.
It was really toasty.
It's all
you got a little sunburn too.
Got a little sun. It's all relative, right? We heard Sean Payton talk the other day about, hey, it's nothing like being in New Orleans with the heat down there and the humidity, and it gets a little toasty out here. But some good work. Thought the offense moved the ball well. Yeah. It was probably highlighted by an end of practice red zone period, a nice throw from Russell Wilson to Courtland Sutton, a nice play, probably the play of the day, certainly, and maybe one of the plays of training camp, a one-handed catch by Adam Troutman. Some other nice plays mixed in there as well, and you're seeing the offense start to roll a little bit. Offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi did say, hey, you don't want to get too high when you have these good moments. You don't want to get too low when you have the not so good moments or the learning moments. said sometimes it's about, hey, what defense are you facing? Does it fit your call well? Does it not?
Right.
Well, obviously, you're not game planning right now, so it's kind of just a hit or miss thing if the play you call works well against whatever coverage that defense has going on. Yeah. But yeah, listen, Joe Lombardi talked about offenses building confidence. Nice to see things work on the field. And Sydney, I'm excited to see. I know we got another practice left, but excited to see how it translates this weekend in San Francisco.
Yeah, me too. And we heard Russell Wilson talk about his confidence in this offense, and of course, how it never wavers, and just how he's seen this offense really progress from the start of training camp to now. Eric, you mentioned Adam Troutman. I want to talk about him for a second because he had that really nice one-handed catch in the end zone. We heard from him, for the first time following practice day since he was traded. Was there anything that kind of stood out to you that he said to the media?
Well, I just think that his comfort level in the offense is really high, right? He said he got here for OTAs and he was like, oh, I've done all this before. I've done this for 3 years. He feels comfortable. We know Sean Payton thinks highly of him. We know Joe Lombardi called him a quarterback-friendly player. He thinks highly of him. And Troutman talks about the versatility that he has, and we've heard Sean talk about that as well. Right. As a blocker, as a receiver, in the right place, soft hands, all these sorts of things. And then kind of, the way that complements other guys in that room with Greg Dulcich and Albert Okwuegbunam. We heard Troutman say those guys are a little more vertically blessed in terms of their speed.
Right.
Chris Manhertz, one of the best blocking tight ends in the entire NFL. But yeah, Troutman's just kind of taking advantage of this opportunity. We know it's a fresh start for him. And I'm excited to see what he can do, because when he was traded here, the Broncos just swapped late round picks and you weren't quite sure what you were going to get. At least I wasn't. He's a guy, he said, hey, it took me a little bit coming out of Dayton to figure out how do I play in the NFL to adjust to this speed, this level of football. Showed some encouraging signs, certainly, with Sean Payton, but didn't do as much last year, obviously. And so you just don't know what you're going to get. And you hear Sean Payton say, hey, we had him graded similarly to some of these third-round tight ends. And, not to, question any of that, but you often hear coaches and GMs after a draft or after a trade say, hey, we had this guy valued here, or, anywhere around the league, we got our guy with that first pick. Sure. So it's a little bit of draft speak, but seeing Troutman out on the field, I think you've seen that translate, and he really has made a big impact, enough so that he's listed as the starter on the Broncos depth chart. And I was unsure what his role was going to be. It seems like he's going to have a big one for the Broncos here this season.
Another guy I want to highlight, Eric, is Courtland Sutton. I mean, he's seemed to have a really, really good camp. How do you just feel like his chemistry with Russ has really progressed and really developed this year? Yeah,
well, I think it's the chemistry with Russ, right? Just being together for another season and building that rapport, figuring out in this offense, where do you need to be, kind of how do you like certain throws, just time on task helps with that. You hear coaches talk about that a lot, and certainly you saw that a couple times on display during this practice. He had the first play of full speed of 11 on 11. Russell Wilson chucks it deep to Courtland Sutton down the right sideline. Courtland goes up and makes a nice catch. Later in the day, back of the end zone, Courtland makes a nice catch. And he's a guy, particularly in the red zone, said I'm excited to see, because just 2 touchdowns last year. I believe 2 touchdowns the year before that. And so not quite that same level as he was back during his Pro Bowl season. But then you look at some of these advanced statistics and you see, okay, well, he had a lot of red zone targets. I believe he had, toward the top of the league in terms of guys that had that touchdown total. And so you expect Courtland Sutton to take advantage of those opportunities more this year. He looks faster. He looks more explosive. We've heard him talk about, kind of losing a little bit of weight and getting his body in a place that it wants to be.
Being in a better mindset.
Yeah, all of that contributes to building that relationship. You just toss the relationship with Russell Wilson in there as another element that's putting Courtland in a good position to succeed. And listen, we've seen it out here. We saw a catch against the Cardinals. With him and Jerry Jeudy, if both those guys stay healthy, and we always knock on wood that they're going to stay healthy, that's a really good duo, and I think they do different things well. But I could see him feeding the ball to Courtland quite a bit, and excited to see what he does.
Definitely will be exciting to watch this year. Eric, we also heard from Vance Joseph earlier in the show. It was great to hear from him. Haven't heard from him in a week or so. He talked about rookie inside linebacker Drew Sanders, and he said something that really stood out to me. He makes a play a day that nobody else can make. That's really impressive coming from Vance.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the size, right? 6'4". He's got the speed. He's a guy that Sean Payton described as a pressure player when they drafted him, has that inside linebacker ability where the Broncos are playing him, has an outside linebacker ability from his experience in college.
Yeah.
And yeah, he does fly around. He's a physical guy. We've seen him, kind of almost lay hits on his own teammates in practice. He's flying around that hard.
Yeah.
But the other thing that stood out to me from what Vance Joseph said is that we're going to use him in ways in season that we're not showing yet. And, whether that's to the media, to fans, in the preseason when other teams obviously have tape to review.
Right.
It's clear that they have a plan and a vision, as Sean Payton would say, for how they want to use Drew Sanders, and they don't want other people to know about it quite yet. And maybe that's a little bit of secrecy. Maybe it's just they haven't gotten to the game planning there yet. But I'm interested to see because he's definitely got a unique skill set just from an athletic standpoint. And you talk about rookies kind of finding a role and being able to contribute in year one. You always have high expectations when they come in. It does seem like Drew Sanders is going to be able to contribute in some way or another. And it seems like the way Vance Joseph is talking about it, that's not just going to be as a special teams player. It's going to be on defense in some way or another.
Right. Yeah. He's another one to keep your eye out for.
Yep.
And Eric, tomorrow's the last day of training camp. Can't even believe it.
Oh my gosh.
Officially the last day of training camp. Crazy.
Yeah. We
flew by this year.
One more open practice flew by.
Yeah.
Excited. Hopefully we finish on a strong note.
Yep. Looking forward to it. Well, Eric, appreciate you joining the show today.
You got it, Sid.
Well, that'll do it for today's episode of Broncos Now. Broncos Country, thanks so much for tuning in. I'll meet you right back here for the final day of training camp tomorrow. I'll see you all then.